Look at that. That is a city. Amazing, beautiful, outstanding. I've got to say, I just love cities. Everything here, okay, apart from the grass and the trees, but everything here was made by humans. Don't you just think humans are just incredible things? That we can create this. We can build this community and tall buildings and just beautiful places to relax and enjoy our surroundings. Just gotta love a city. I love this park. It's a beautiful park and it's right smack bang in the centre of Beijing on a slither up the side of the river. I do like parks. I think I've always been and thought of myself as a city boy. I like cities. The hassle and the bustle of a city for me is just exciting. I also like to watch people and see how communities and societies, how they intermingle and how they just get on with their everyday life. And for me, things somehow work, but they kinda, in a way, don't work in a city, if you know what I mean. They work, but they don't work in the way that they were intended, so to speak. People, though, I find they do find ways to make things work for them in a city. I'm always fascinated by the ingenuity of people, just everyday people. And a city is where you find the best experience of people just finding their own way, their ingenuity comes through. I remember reading a story where the town planners were getting frustrated because people were not using the paths as intended, because they would lay the paths, but instead people were cutting across the grass, which was causing worn grass, causing worn grass, and then the town planners were getting frustrated. But what was happening was the worn grass was indicating exactly where people wanted the paths built. So some bright spark said, hey, why don't we just lay the grass? And then where the worn path is, that's where we should put the path, the slabbing path. And for me, that sums up a lot. I always liked that story. Beijing, for me, is a city, a large city. And being in Beijing, living here, in a city like Beijing, 22 million people, all people that are just going about their daily routine, it can be exhausting at times. I think I also exhaust myself half the time by overthinking. And when you couple that with the full-on nature of this city or any city, then I can understand sometimes why I sort of feel jaded at times. My head gets caught up with a whole lot of the nonsense, the fringes of society, even though I know that it is impossible to change much or if not most of their viewpoint. I still get caught up with that, sometimes debating and arguing online. I also get tied up with the foreign policy mistakes that I see governments make. And mark my words here, when I see America this or Europe, UK that, I'm always talking about their governments, the choices they make and the foreign policy and directions that they've put in place, because they've got a habit of spilling over negatively onto most of the people in the world that I think just want to get on with their day-to-day routine and then get home safely to their families at the end of the day. I am of the opinion that 90% of the people in the world just want to get along, and then there's this 10%, and that's 10% never want to compromise, or they're being severely influenced by other things. And they are often the loudest, and it's the loudest that I think should learn to maybe calm sometimes. And for me, I think I should just shut off from that loud noise sometimes. That is why I just love coming to the parks in Beijing. In fact, any park, any city, it adds that opportunity to duck in and away from the chaos of the city. And I'd shared a time lapse of a bus tour that I took in London on a previous video, and a person put on the comments in the box below that London didn't look like it had a lot of trees, very few trees. And I watched the time lapse again and I realised they were correct. So I was really curious to check out if there was any merit in that. And I was surprised to find out that Beijing had approximately 1,100 parks. I think it's 1,065 or something like that. And London had 3,000 parks. And I thought that doesn't add up to me, that doesn't seem correct to me. Because when I lived in London, it did not feel like that. It didn't feel like it had a lot of green spaces, obviously, big Hyde Park and so on, but above that, not a lot of green spaces. And I love London. It's a fantastic city. And maybe when I was in London, I was more focused on the other activities that happen in London. And for me, London is much better than Beijing for the other activities, if you get what I mean. But back to parks and green spaces. When I looked again at the information, I realised that although in London there was more parks, much more than Beijing, Beijing was more green because it had a higher rate of green area per park. And at this point, I thought, I just need to stop here, because once again I was getting all caught up in my head about what was best, who was biggest, who was the largest, what was the easiest, what was the best. Question. So I decided to stop, put away my phone, stop checking internet, and just enjoy the beauty of the park and the peace that it brings me. So peace, enjoy the park.
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.